Hello, everyone, and welcome to Movie Goodness, where we examine life through cinema here on the KB Radio Network. I am your host, Kevin Reed, and today we are going to celebrate the life of arguably one of the greatest actors of all time. I honestly, and it's sad to say, after somebody passes away, you start reflecting back on their life and their career, in this case the career, and you look back at the body of work. Even though this individual has received countless accolades for his work on screen, I don't think he actually got his proper due, and that is none other than the great Gene Hackman, who passed away on February the 26th of 2025 at the ripe young age of 95 years old. Gene Hackman is one of my favorite actors, and I came to that conclusion after he passed away. And it's sad to say that. I always felt he was an excellent actor, enjoyed him in absolutely every single movie I've seen him in. There was never a point where I saw Gene Hackman in a movie and I was like, man, I can't stand him in this movie. Oh, he mailed this one in. Never felt that way about Gene Hackman. But when he passed away and I started thinking back on all of the films that he was a part of and throughout his career, I was like, man, Gene Hackman was a beast. I mean, he was an absolute beast. Gene Hackman, he was in comedies, action movies, dramas, thrillers, comic book movies, westerns, every single genre you can think of. Gene Hackman was a part of, and he was excellent in every single film that he was in. And so it was sad. I was sad when he passed away, even though he was 95 years old. You can argue the point, he lived a long and successful life, a full life at 95 years old. And, you know, how many of us, how many of us are going to be blessed enough to make it to 95? I can't imagine, getting to 95 years old. Wouldn't mind it. I wouldn't mind it. I'm not tempting fate here, but I'm just saying, oh, that's a number that is just out of this world. My grandmother, she lived to be, and I know my family's gonna kill me when they hear this. I can't remember. I know she was she was close to 100. I think she was around 95, 96 when she passed away. But that's besides the point. But I don't know anybody else in my life that lived that long. But man, Gene Hackman, an absolute legend. Absolute legend. We're gonna go over his life. We're gonna uh, this is a in memoriam, if you will, of Gene Hackman, and go over his life and go over the films that he was a part of. Not all of them, because he was in 80 films throughout his career, so we're not going to break down all 80, but we're gonna touch in on a couple of them, and I'm gonna tell you my favorite Gene Hackman performance in my favorite film, with Gene Hackman being a part of, and it's not one that you will think. It is a surprising uh uh pick as my number one Gene Hackman film. And that's saying a lot, because there's a lot of films that he was a part of that you can sit back and say, "Oh, that's my favorite. No, that's my favorite. No, that's my favorite of his." So it's a the man was just amazing in his acting career. And so without further ado, let's jump into the life of Gene Hackman, who was born Eugene Allen Hackman on January the 30th, 1930, and passed away on February the 26th, 2025. He was an actor in his career, which spanned over 4 decades. He received 2 Academy Awards, 2 British Academy Film Awards, and 4 Golden Globe Awards. Hackman's 2 Academy Awards were, at least his wins for Best Actor, were uh, his portrayal of Jimmy Popeye Dole in The French Connection in 1971, and for Best Supporting Actor in the role of the villainous sheriff in Clint Eastwood's Western Unforgiven, which was released in 1992. He was also Oscar nominated in 3 other roles as Buck Barrow in the crime drama Bonnie and Clyde in 1967, a college professor in the drama I Never Sang for My Father in 1970, and an FBI agent in the historical drama Mississippi Burnings in 1988. Hackman gained further fame for his portrayal of Lex Luthor in Superman in 1978 and its sequels Superman 2 in 1980 and unfortunately Superman 4 The Quest for Peace in 1987. He also acted in The Poseidon Adventure in 1972, Scarecrow in 1973, The Conversation, which I just recently saw because I listened to these different podcasts and film cinephiles and whatnot, and they talk about The Conversation, and I never seen that movie, so I finally sat down and watched it sometime last year, and I get it. I understand why everybody reveres that film from 1974. A Bridge Too Far in 1977, Under Fire in 1983, Power in 1986, Loose Cannons in 1990, The Firm in 1993, The Quick and the Dead in 1995, The Birdcage in 1996, and Runaway Juror in 2003, which led to his final acting appearance where he retired after he filmed Welcome to Moose Point in 2004. But it all started back in 1956. In 1956, Hackman began pursuing an acting career after wanting to be an actor ever since he was 10 years old. He joined the Pasadena Playhouse in California, where he befriended another actor that you might have heard his name, Dustin Hoffman, and the two gained a friendship and worked together at this playhouse. Already seen as outsiders by their classmates, Hackman and Hoffman were voted the least likely to succeed. I would love to know who else came out of that class. Who else? You voted the two probably most decorated actors to come out of that generation as the least likely to succeed. That is that's a head scratcher, but you never know. You just never know. But that's besides the point. Hackman got the lowest score at the Pasadena Playhouse that they've ever given out at that class. He got the absolute lowest score. Determined to prove everybody wrong there, Hackman moved to New York City. In a 2004 article in Vanity Fair, it describes Hackman, Dustin Hoffman, and Robert Duvall as struggling California-born actors and close friends, sharing New York apartments in various two-person combinations in the 1960s. These three friends, they were just bouncing from apartment to apartment with one another as they looked for work around this time. So to support himself between acting jobs, Gene Hackman would work at this Howard Johnson restaurant where he encountered an instructor from the Pasadena Playhouse who said that his job proved that Hackman wouldn't amount to anything. So even after he left the school, they were still throwing shade at the man. A Marine officer who saw him as a doorman said, "Hackman, you're a sorry son of a bitch." And so the rejection actually motivated Hackman. As he said, and this is a quote from uh, this article that came out in 2004, and this is a direct quote from Gene Hackman. It was more psychological warfare because I wasn't going to let those effers get me down. I insisted with myself that I would continue to do whatever it took to get a job. It was like me against them. In some way, unfortunately, I still feel that way. But I think if you're really interested in acting, there's a part for you that relishes the struggle. It's a narcono in a way that you are trained to do this work and nobody will let you do it. So you're a little bit nuts. You lie to people, you cheat, you do whatever it takes to get an audition, get a job. That was the quote from Gene Hackman in that Vanity Fair article in 2004. Gene Hackman got various bit roles. For example, in the film Mad Dog Cow and on multiple television shows, Tallahassee 7000, the United the United States Steel Hour, Route 66, Naked City, The Defenders, the DuPont Show of the Week, East Side, West Side, and Brenner. Gene Hackman began performing in several off-Broadway plays, and in 1963, he made his Broadway debut in Children from Their Games, which had only a short run, as did A Rainy Day in Norwich. However, Any Wednesday with actress Sandy Dennis was a huge Broadway success in 1964. This opened the door to film work. His first credited role in Lydia with Warren Beatty in the lead role. Gene Hackman returned to Broadway in Poor Richard in 1964 through 1965, which ran for over 100 performances. He continued to do television, for example, The Trials of O'Brien, Hawk, the FBI, and had a small part as Dr. John Whipple in the epic film Hawaii. He has small roles in features like First to Fight in 1967, A Covenant with Death in 1967, and Banning in 1967. Gene Hackman was originally cast as Mr. Robinson in the 1967 Mike Nichols film The Graduate, but Nichols fired him 3 weeks into rehearsals for being too young for the role. He was replaced by Murray Hamilton. Also in 1967, he appeared on an episode of the TV show The Invaders entitled The Spores, and as Buck Borrowed in 1967's Bonnie and Clyde, which earned him his first Academy Award nomination for Best Supporting Actor. Gene Hackman's second Best Supporting Actor nomination was for the role in I Never Sang for My Father in 1970. He starred in Doctor's Wives in 1971, The Hunting Party in 1971, then won the Academy Award for Best Actor for his performance as New York City Detective Jimmy Popeye Doyle in The French Connection, making his graduation to stardom. After The French Connection, Gene Hackman starred in 10 films, not including his cameo in Young Frankenstein. And a lot of people didn't know that, me included, um, until I was watching a documentary of the making of Young Frankenstein. Now, I've seen Young Frankenstein several times throughout my life. Did not know that was him. Did not know until I watched this making of documentary. And wait, that was Gene Hackman? That was like the first real uh, cameo or Easter egg type thing growing up for me. But in any event, around this time, around this era, Gene Hackman was considered one of the most prolific actors in Hollywood. Uh, he followed The French Connection with the leading roles in Prime Cut 1972, The Poseidon Adventure in 1972, Scarecrow in 1973, alongside Al Pacino, which was Gene Hackman's favorite role of his career. As he said in numerous interviews. He also won the Palme d'Or at the Cannes Film Festival for that role, and in Francis Ford Coppola's The Conversation in 1974, which he was nominated for several. Well, the film was nominated for several Academy Awards and also won the Palme d'Or at the Cannes Film Festival as well. That same year, Hackman appeared in what would become the most famous comedic roles as Harold the Blind Man in Young Frankenstein. Did not know that was him. I had no idea that was him. It's crazy. And when I go back and look at it, I can see it's him. But I don't know why it never registered to me that that was Gene Hackman in that role. But he also appeared in Zandy Bride in 1974, Night Moves in 1975 for director Arthur Penn. Gene Hackman played one of Teddy Roosevelt's former Rough Riders in the Western horse racing saga Bite the Bullet in 1975. He reprised his Oscar-winning role as Popeye Doyle in the sequel French Connection 2 in 1975 and co-starred with Burt Reynolds and Liza Minnelli in Lucky Lady in 1975, a notorious flop. I don't think I've ever seen that. I never heard of Lucky Lady. It's probably one of the only films of Gene Hackman I have never seen. But after making The Domino Principle in 1977 for Stanley Kramer, Gene Hackman was part of an all-star cast in the war film A Bridge Too Far in 1977, playing Polish General. I'm not going to attempt to say his character name in the film, and was an officer in the French Foreign Legion in March or Die in 1977. Gene Hackman showed his talent for both comedy and the slow burn as criminal mastermind Lex Luthor in Superman the movie in 1978, a role he would reprise in 1980 and unfortunately in 1987 for the sequels. Let's just talk about that for a minute, because this was my first exposure to Gene Hackman in this role as Lex Luthor. And you know, growing up in the early 80s, and you know, weren't as blessed as children today who get comic book movies and TV shows, it seems like every month, sometimes twice a month. And it was just around this time, you got none. Superman was the first live action superhero movie to come out around that time, and it stayed that way forever. Superman 2, and it was, I don't know. I guess it's the film that really brought me into comic books in a way. That made me love superheroes, with the late great Christopher Reeves, of course, as Superman. And that movie is so iconic and so special to a lot of people still to this day. And no other person can be Superman. And you can make the argument that nobody else can be Lex Luthor either, with Gene Hackman as this role. Even though, you know, around the era when I was reading comic books, Lex Luthor wasn't like the Lex Luthor that Gene Hackman portrayed. He was more uh comical, and he was just a criminal mastermind, but a criminal. He wasn't of the prestige that he's portrayed in the comics nowadays. But I get it. It is what it is. I would have loved to have seen Gene Hackman play Lex Luthor as he is depicted in the comics. And even with that, he fit in that film going up toe to toe against Christopher Reeves, because Christopher Reeves wasn't well known. He was pretty much an unknown star at that time. And you have Gene Hackman, as the villain. And it was just a good back and forth between those two. Uh a good way to show Superman overcoming these obstacles, when you look at it and from the perspective of Christopher Reeves going up against Gene Hackman, this unknown going up against one of the most decorated leading actors in Hollywood at the time. Actually, throughout his whole career, to be honest with you. So uh, that just brought a different kind of feel to the film, and that's why that film still holds up to this day, despite the fact that that's not the character from the comics. uh it still worked. Yeah, Kevin Spacey could have been a good Lex Luthor. It was just a bad movie in Superman Returns. um Jury's still out on what Nicholas Hoult is going to do in this Superman film that comes out in a few months. But I know a lot of people love Michael Rosenbaum. I believe that's his name. In Smallville, I thought he was an excellent Lex Luthor. Excellent Lex Luthor. But that was television. We're talking film. Gene Hackman still holds the crown as the best Lex Luthor that we've seen thus far. But the sequels, well, Superman 2 is my favorite. And so overall, I just love Superman 2. Superman 4 and the Quest for Peace, I don't know. I get, well, he has said that he did that movie for the money. They all did it for the Christopher Reeves, everybody. They came back to do that movie for the money. And you could tell. But that's the one film. And I know I'm kind of contradicting myself when I said earlier on in his episode that he never mailed in a role. He mailed in a performance in Superman 4. And everybody did. So I don't fault him for that. That movie was just bad. That was a horrible movie. But we know that was a money thing. But despite that, still loved Gene Hackman in that role. Moving on deep into the 80s, well, from all the way through the 80s, even to the 90s, Gene Hackman alternated between leading man and supporting roles during the 80s. He uh, appeared opposite Barbara Streisand in All Night Long in 1981. He supported Warren Beatty yet again in Reds in 1981. He played the lead in Elektra in 1983 and a supporting role in Under Fire in 1983. Hackman provided the voice of God in Two of a Kind in 1983 and starred in Uncommon Valor in 1983. 83 was a busy year for Gene Hackman, as you can see. Moving on to 1984, he starred in Misunderstood in 1985, Twice in a Lifetime. Also in 1985, Target for Arthur Penn, and in 1986, Power. Between 1985 and 1988, he starred in 9 films, making him the busiest actor in Hollywood alongside Steve Guttenberg. If you remember that young man from the Police Academy films. Yes, during that little stretch there for 3 years, those two were vying for the most movies to come out in a 4-year span. 9 films. Uh, yes, around this time he was banging it out. And inside of that time period, in 1986, Gene Hackman played a high school basketball coach in what a lot of people consider one of the greatest sports films of all time, Hoosiers, which a 2008 American Film Institute poll named the 4th greatest sports film of all time. After Superman 4, The Quest for Peace in 1987, which Hackman voiced Nuclear Man as well as played Lex Luthor in the movie, Gene Hackman was in No Way Out in 1987, Split Decisions in 1988, Bat 21 in 1988, Full Moon and Blue Water in 1988, Another Woman in 1988 for Woody Allen. Gene Hackman starred in Mississippi Burning, for which he was nominated for his second Best Actor Academy Award. After this, he appeared in The Package in 1989. Gene Hackman starred in Loose Cannons in 1990 with Dan Aykroyd, and he had a supporting role in Postcards from the Edge in 1990. He appeared with Ann Archer in Narrow Margin in 1990, a remake of the 1952 film The Narrow Margin. After Class Action in 1991 and Company Business in 1991, Gene Hackman played the sinister sheriff, Little Bill Daggett, in the Western Unforgiven, which was directed by Clint Eastwood. One of my favorite Westerns of all time. I remember going to the theater to see that with my dad, and memory serves, memory serves, my dad didn't too much care for Unforgiven. My dad's a big Western guy. And so that's why I took him to go see this. Clint Eastwood, a Western. Uh, we don't get much Westerns on the big screen these days. Let's go see it, Pop. So finally, I drug him to go see it. He ain't too much care for it. I loved the movie. I absolutely loved it, but memory serves, he didn't like. I think he felt it was all right, but he wasn't the biggest fan of it. But it is, you win some, you lose some. But going back to Unforgiven, Gene Hackman did not want the role. It's funny enough, he did not want to play Little Bill in Unforgiven. He had vowed to avoid violent roles. He had stopped playing these characters on screen. But it was Clint Eastwood who convinced him to take the part. And it took a while for Clint to convince him to take the role of Little Bill in the film. And on his sake, it was good that he did, because this film earned him his second Academy Award, this time for Best Supporting Actor, as well as the film winning Best Picture at that year's Academy Awards. And now it's dawned on me. My dad, I'm going back to my dad. he didn't express it when we went to the movies, but when it won Best Picture, that's when he said, well, it was all right, but I don't think it deserved to be Best Picture. Those are the words I remember. It's funny you remember stupid conversations like that when you but that's what he had said. He was like, I don't think it should have won Best Picture. And in my mind, I'm like, did you see the other four nominated films? And I know he didn't. I know he didn't. But it's besides the point. He didn't care for the movie. But I think it deserved Best Picture. Great film. Anyways, in 1993, he appeared in Geronimo, an American Legend, as Brigadier General George Crook, and co-starred with Tom Cruise as a corrupt lawyer in The Firm, the legal thriller which is based on a John Grisham novel. Gene Hackman would appear in two other films based on John Grisham novels, playing convict Sam Carhall and on death row in The Chamber in 1996, and a jury consultant in Runaway Juror in 2003. Other notable films Gene Hackman appeared in during the 1990s included Wyatt Earp in 1994, The Quick and the Dead in 1995, opposite Sharon Stone and Leonardo DiCaprio, as well as Russell Crowe was in that movie as well, and as submarine captain Frank Ramsey alongside Denzel Washington in Crimson Tide in 1995. That was another film that just blew me away when I saw that in the theaters, because I was a big submarine guy. I guess a lot of kids, a lot of especially little boys, they love submarine stuff and military type stuff. And I was big on submarines, even though I could not get in one. You could not pay me enough money to get in a submarine, because I am highly claustrophobic. There's no way I'm getting in a submarine. I would lose my mind. But I love submarine movies. I love Hunt for Red October, Crimson Tide, movies like that. What was that one with Matthew McConaughey? U-571 or something like that. Yeah, I love submarine movies. But Crimson Tide was so intense to see Gene Hackman and Denzel Washington confined in a submarine going at each other. That movie was great. I love that movie. Um, Gene Hackman played producer Harry Zim with John Travolta in the comedy drama Get Shorty in 1995. In 1996, he took a comedic turn as conservative Senator Kevin Keeley in The Birdcage with Robin Williams and Nathan Lane, a film that I was wondering around this time, what was the big allure for The Birdcage? I'm because around this time I'm about 17, 18 when this movie came out. So I'm like, why is everybody tripping over this movie? You know what I'm saying? What why is because it was the big buzz around this film. And so when I went and seen it, of course I didn't find it that funny, but I could see it was a, a well-made movie. Now I watch it, it's a real good movie. And it's funny. It's funny. The jokes went over my head the first time I watched it. I'm just be honest. They went completely over my head. As I got older and I watched it again a few years back, it's been a while since I watched it. I got it now. I guess I wasn't mature enough at the time. But it's a funny movie, really good movie, underrated film, I may add. He co-starred with Hugh Grant in Extreme Measures in 1996, reunited with Clint Eastwood in Absolute Power in 1997. Gene Hackman did Twilight in 1998, and no, not the sparkling vampires. This was something completely different. It's a good little movie, but it has nothing to do with vampires. Anyways, he did one of the voices in Ants as well in 1998. He was the general, I believe, or the leader of I forgot, but he was the bad guy in that. I loved Ants. Ants is one of them sneaky good movies that came out in the late 90s that I love that movie. It sticks with me for some strange reason. Woody Allen's in that movie, at least providing the voice. Sharon Stone. It was an all-star voice cast. But I always enjoyed Ants. Actually, the more I'm talking about it now, I want to watch it again. It's been a while since I watched it. But yes, Gene Hackman was one of the voices, and he did an excellent job doing the voiceover work. I'm telling you, this dude was money. This dude was money. Speaking of money, in 1998, he co-starred with Will Smith in the probably one of the most prolific horror films of all time that isn't a horror film. It is Enemy of the State. It is frightening, that movie, because of the surveillance and the spying from the government and all that stuff made me 110% paranoid all the time. And this is one of the movies that convinced me to go back and watch The Conversation, because his character in Enemy of the State is like a older version, which I guess you could say it is. You could argue that this is the sequel to The Conversation. It's the older version of that character. But the main takeaway from this film, from Enemy of the State, was Will Smith. Will Smith, if he could stand toe to toe with Gene Hackman, probably one of the greatest actors of all time, and he did. He did an excellent job, and this is the film that convinced me that Will Smith can actually act. He wasn't just being typecast in these little goofy roles that he plays, but he showed he can act. He wasn't relying on action, because this wasn't. It had action in it, but it wasn't an action heavy film. This was a thriller, and Will Smith did an excellent job, and Gene Hackman did even more excellent job. I think Gene Hackman in this film is severely underrated because I think he should have been nominated for this. Really, really good performance by Gene Hackman in Enemy of the State. Moving over to the 2000s, Gene Hackman co-starred with Morgan Freeman, reteaming with him from Unforgiven in Under Suspicion. Uh, he also co-starred with Keanu Reeves in The Replacements in 2000, Owen Wilson in Behind Enemy Lines in 2001, co-starred with Sigourney Weaver in Heartbreakers in 2001, which is a very funny movie. If you haven't seen that movie, Jennifer Love Hewitt is also in that film. Really good movie. I like that. It was cute. It was cute. And Gene Hackman was the funniest part of that movie. Also in 2001, he appeared in the crime thriller Heist. He starred as an aging professional thief who is forced into one final job. This movie, for no other reason, the movie was kind of boring, to be honest. I'm gonna be honest with you. But Gene Hackman has the coldest line I have ever heard on film. Well, one of them. One of the coldest lines I've ever heard on film. It was at the end, I guess spoilers for Heist. And he has the guy, so I won't spoil it all. I'm just gonna say the guy got him about to kill him. And the guy begging for his life. He was like, well, he wasn't begging for his life. He was like, aren't you gonna allow me to say my last words? And Gene Hackman's character, without even blinking, you just did and pulled the trigger. I mean, that was the coldest line delivery I have ever heard. I loved that. I loved it. It saved the movie for me because the movie, it was boring to me at the time, but I loved the way it ended. Saved the film. He also made a cameo in The Mexican in 2001, which co-starred Julia Roberts and Brad Pitt. Gene Hackman gained much critical acclaim playing against type as the head of an eccentric family in Wes Anderson's comedy The Royal Tenenbaums in 2001, which he received a Golden Globe Award for Best Actor in a Motion Picture, Musical, or Comedy. And this, ladies and gentlemen, is my all-time favorite Gene Hackman film. The Royal Tenenbaums, for some strange reason, it sticks out to me as number one. It's one of the funniest films I've ever seen. It's one of the best written films I've ever seen. This is my favorite Wes Anderson film. Actually, this is my only Wes Anderson film that I like. I love The Royal Tenenbaums. And this movie does not work unless Gene Hackman is the way he is. What makes it so crazy? He wanted to kill Wes Anderson. They did not get along while filming this movie. It was a nightmare, and they both have said this in interviews during and after. They, they did not like working together at all, but somehow they was able to squeeze out a Golden Globe Award out of this performance that he couldn't stay. You couldn't tell. You could not tell on screen. That just goes to that's just a testament to Gene Hackman's professionalism, uh, 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 discipline in the role. You know, he probably yelled cut and he switched back in like cursing each other out or whatever. But once they yelled action, he was all in on Royal Tenenbaum. I I loved him in his role. I Me and my wife, because she's the one that made me watch it. I wasn't, and I'm talking year when it first came out. I think she had rented it or something like that, and she was like, "You gonna watch it with me?" I don't want to watch it, because Wes Anderson is a weird. It's just a weird type of movie, and you got to be in a certain mood to watch a Wes Anderson movie, and I wasn't in that mood at that time. But I decided to sit down with her and watch it, and we both were just dying laughing. First time, you know, it's been times when I've watched movies, for example, Step Brothers. The first time I watched Step Brothers, didn't crack a smile. I I I didn't think it was funny. Everybody telling me, my friends, I had cousins that, man, you watched it, and they always come to me because they know I'm the movie guy, and so they want to get my opinions, whoever it may be. And so my cousin, he had came to me, he was like, "Man, you saw Step Brothers?" I said, "Yeah, I saw it." He went, "What, you didn't like it?" No, it wasn't funny to me. And the look of disgust on his face, I mean, I almost cried. I was like, man, I mean, I just didn't like it. I'm sorry. And it took a few months. I don't know if it came on TV or something, or rented it, or something that happened. I started watching it. And the second time I watched it, I was dying laughing. And and I appreciated the film more. To this day, I love that movie. Same thing with Zoolander, the first one, not the second one, but the first one. Didn't laugh the first time. It took a second time for me to really enjoy it, and I burst out laughing every time I watch it. For the Royal Tenenbaums, I said all that to say this: I always laughed at that movie, always, because it takes a lot to get me to audibly laugh. Film wise, it takes a lot. It has to be funny, and this film did it. It struck that chord with me. So I always considered this my favorite Gene Hackman movie. And I have been through the list. It's only a couple of more, but I've been through the majority of his filmography here, and he has put out some amazing movies, or been a part of some amazing movies. And any one of them, if you was to say, "Oh, this is my favorite," no, this one is my favorite, no, this one is, I would not fight you, I would not argue with you because they are great movies. But personally, the Royal Tenenbaums is the greatest to me. Moving on to 2003, he also starred in another John Grisham legal drama, Runaway Jury. At long last, getting to work with his longtime friend for the first and unfortunately last time ever, Dustin Hoffman. Yes, the two that started off at that Pasadena Playhouse, where they both were voted least likely to succeed, over 50 years later, finally getting to share the screen together in this film. And I think that was just a full circle moment, because the following year, he starred in his final film, the comedy Welcome to Moose Point, which he announced his retirement from film after that release. But he has had an outstanding career, outstanding, and believe it or not, I didn't even touch in on the, the rest. Though, I mean, there's still a lot more that he's done throughout his career. But moving over to his personal life, Gene Hackman has three children. He had two marriages. Unfortunately, his last marriage to classical pianist Betsy Arakawa, I believe that's her, how you pronounce her name. They passed away together in their Santa Fe, New Mexico home. They both were found almost mummified. They said that the bodies were there for a minute, and so they're classified to have died on February the 26th. But it was much sooner than that, and there's a lot of speculation going into how this happened, that he well, not he, but that there was carbon monoxide poisoning, probably, that uh he was 95 years old. So but the mystery is that they both passed at the same time. They said that there was possible um uh, uh pills laying next to Betsy. She was in the bedroom, he was in the mud room. And so there's a lot of speculation. I'm not getting into all of that. none of that holds any relevance to this show right now. you know, I don't know. I don't know. So we're just not getting into all that. But what we do know is that Gene Hackman, Hollywood legend, Hollywood icon, has passed away at the age of 95 years old, and he will be sorely missed. I mean, and I know it's been over 20 years since the last time he's been on uh, anybody's zeitgeist, as far as appearing in films or TV shows or even in interviews or anything. When he walked away. He didn't he didn't he didn't come around for nothing. He was done. He had wrapped it up. And kudos to him, man. He deserved it. He deserved his time to relax and just reap the benefits of his work over shoot, what 50 some odd years. I mean, he deserved a break, and God bless him. He will be missed. I feel bad that had to wait till he passed away to honor him. Just me on a personal level. Wait till he passed away to honor him because he meant a lot. Me growing up, and I've seen a lot of films with Gene Hackman. Enjoyed 99% of them. So he played a big part in my coming up and in my enjoyment of film and television and whatnot. So what sticks out to me with Gene Hackman can do no wrong. He was great in every single genre of film, whether it's westerns, crime dramas, comedies, animated films, you name it. He has done it. I think the only thing, well, maybe sci-fi. I was gonna say sci-fi. Um, with Superman. That's kind of science fiction, huh? Well, if not, comic book movies, So he was in every single genre and excelled in every single genre. An amazing performer. Don't know much about him personally, so I'm assuming he was an amazing man. The man lived to be 95 years old. And so God bless him. My condolences to the Hackman family, to his wife, family, and everybody who was affected by this passing of this legend. Also, I do want to note this as well. On the same day, I believe, we lost a young actress, 39 years old, Michelle Trachtenberg. A lot of people know her from Harriet the Spy, from Buffy the Vampire Slayer, and whatnot. She passed away at the age of 39. They say it was natural causes. Pretty odd, somebody passed away that young. But she was a real good actress as well, young actress. Didn't see much of her. I don't know. She kind of disappeared from the limelight. I know she was working. She was doing little things here and there, but never, big roles. But yeah, she passed away as well. So our thoughts go out to her, and her and her family, I should say. But Gene Hackman, man, the death of a legend. Man, I'm gonna watch a Gene Hackman film this weekend in honor of the man. It'll probably be the Royal Tenenbaums. I haven't seen it in a while. I need to get back in, jump back into that world. I absolutely love that movie, but that's my opinion. I want to know, what's your favorite Gene Hackman film? Which film of his did you absolutely love? There's no wrong answers in this show. And he has put out some bangers throughout his career. I would love to know your favorite. Email the show, kbradiopodcast@gmail.com. If you want to discuss through other means, such as social media, just search for the KB Radio Network. Everybody subscribe to the KB Radio Network channel on YouTube and like this video if you don't mind. Don't forget about the 5 stars, the reviews, and sharing this show if you're listening on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, iHeartRadio, wherever you are currently listening to Movie Goodness here on the KB Radio Network. Everybody, thank you for joining me for this tribute, this celebration of life and the career of one Gene Hackman. Rest in peace, King. Want you all to know that I love you, continue to love everyone, and until we speak again, you all be blessed.